But yeah, I think it's such a broad topic in corporate rating. It really is something that I'm proud of, what I'm passionate and what I love to do. And I thought today, in terms of just maybe introducing the whole kind of, the whole session around getting corporate ready, I'll touch on 2 or 3 key aspects at very high level. I really like to be able to at least spend some time maybe answering questions towards the end, if that's how if you're comfortable with that, Rorisang, as well. So I don't want it to be death by a PowerPoint where I'm just kind of presenting, and then you guys don't get to ask questions along the way. So I love to be able to engage. I am going to share a presentation, maybe take you through a little bit of who I am as a person, and a little bit of my career, but also then how Get Corporate Ready really started, and some of the key aspects and takeaways that you guys can expect to take. Oh, so Rorisang, it says that host disabled participant screen sharing. Okay. Could you
let me sort that out?
Enable it for me? And just to get a sense, Rorisang, everyone, that's a lot of the participants today, is it university students or kind of young professionals?
It's a mixture of both. So there is, yeah. Can you share now your screen?
Let me try again. Yes.
Okay, great. So it's a mixture of both. We have some university students, we have some people who are sort of at the start of the legal careers, and we have some people who've been lawyers for a couple of years. So it's a good mixture.
Okay. So I'll touch on a little bit of every aspect, if possible, just to make sure that I'm touching the right groups of people. So just a little bit of history or a little bit about my career journey. As Rorisang has said, currently I look after HR for We Buy Cars, but I've had the privilege of really working for some of the best brands professionally in my career. I studied at Wits University. I've got my honors in HR and management. I then, did a stint at Investec Bank, have worked for Standard Bank within corporate investment banking as well. And then, my longest stint really around the time that I was at Bowman's, I headed up the graduate recruitment and development aspect there. I then moved on to Transaction Capital, and We Buy Cars falls under Transaction Capital as one of their biggest subsidiaries. So as you can see,
Hi,
I guess in my...
I'm Bohlale from...
Hi, Bohlale.
Do you want to ask a question, Bohlale?
No, I think there's just interference. I think you can go ahead.
Okay. So just from a career perspective, guys, I chose to do HR. It was really a process of elimination. A lot of you, I know, when you're at university, you're kind of either choosing a career based on what your parents have asked you to do, or you're choosing something you think you might like, and as you're studying, you're like, not too sure if I'm going the right route. So HR for me, I feel, found me, and it's something that I have thoroughly enjoyed as I've gone through, but particularly from a young talent perspective. I've spent a lot of my career within banking industry, but my highlight, I think, was my time at Bowman's. Really thoroughly enjoyed the legal industry as well. So those are the companies that I've worked for in a nutshell, and I've grown in my journey, as an HR specialist. And the reason why we've even come up with, there we go. The reason why Get Corporate Ready is something that is just so close to my heart is really because I've got such a massive passion for youth development. And for me, during COVID was an opportune time for me to kind of get a sense of how else can I start sharing the knowledge that I have as I've gone through my career with more people, right? I used to be able to do that as I went to different career fairs, different universities, and it really helped me have those types of conversations on a regular basis across the country, right? But once COVID kicked in, I found myself sitting at home two years straight, and still feeling the really wanting to make sure that I was still giving of myself in this way because I really, really have a deep passion for it. I see it as an opportunity to really shape futures of our youth going forward. And it's really just a platform that I've created that is about sharing of information. As I thought back to my career and how it started, I really found myself thinking about how, geez, I wish I had someone that guided me from the time I was a student into what it takes to prepare yourself for the world of corporate. I kind of bashed my head a lot of times as I was going through my career, and a lot of the things that I learned along the way, I learned it through the hard way. And in my career, spent a lot of time in youth development, running grad programs, and I saw a gap. I saw a gap where I thought there's a lot of young Black students that are coming up within South Africa, but maybe don't actually even have, the background or the parents or the type of support system to allow them to know the things that they're supposed to know in order to make it in corporate. So Get Corporate Ready really was kind of, a brainchild through just thinking around all of that holistically and saying, let me share a lot of the information I have from, interview stage, from transitioning from the world of university into corporate. So for me, the key topics that made me come up with Get Corporate Ready was really, as I said, opportunity to shape futures, sharing personal lessons and experiences that I've gone through personally as I've gone through corporate, but also because I've seen so many youth and so many graduates come through university into corporate. I've learned a lot of lessons from them as well and their perspectives. One of the key things for me that I always speak about is how the university mindset is so key. So for those of you that are still at university, when you speak about university mindset, it's really just about understanding, in my time at university, I've got 4 or 5 years to spend here. How am I best using this time to ensure that as I start my career in corporate, I'm giving myself the best foot forward, right? I think a lot of times when you speak to students at university, it's really about, well, I'm here, I need to pass, and then hopefully I get a job afterwards. But what I realized over time is that it's not just about passing, being at university isn't about, well, I just need to get the marks and get through. It's about understanding, what career am I in? Where is it going to take me? What are the companies that are hiring for my skill set? What is it that those companies are looking for in order for me to start making sure that my time at university is shaping me into being the type of candidate that those types of corporates are looking for, right? So your mindset around your time at university is so, so key. And that for me is one of the biggest aspects that I think lacks from an information perspective in just helping students really guide them through their time at university. But once you've gone through the university time and now you're preparing yourself for corporate, key focus is how you prepare for your interviews. I think, if you haven't been for an interview ever, I think sometimes you kind of go there, you've prepared 1 or 2 questions, if anything, and you're hoping to just have a discussion around why you need a job, right? But being a recruiter and being someone that's in HR, it's a lot more that you need to do in order to prepare yourself for that kind of time and stage in your career, right? Preparation is absolutely fundamental when it comes to interviews. It's really so important because, it takes, as organizations, it's not just about filling the role, it's about filling the role with the right candidate. And for you to be able to pitch yourself as the right candidate, it's so important for you to know a couple of the key questions that get asked and make sure that you've prepared yourself for that. Make sure that you know what the answer is going to be. And what that really does is that it also helps you just from a nerve perspective. It helps you calm your nerves when you're going to an interview. If you are a lot more prepared in terms of, knowing some of the key questions that are going to be asked, it helps you relax into the moment at that point in time. So preparing for interviews is important. But once you've gotten that job, transitioning into the world of corporate is also equally as key. So my platform that Rorisang talks to you guys about is really just a platform that shares a little bit of everything that I've shared here on this particular slide. I am continuously trying to ensure that I am posting more information and more videos that are really just going to help you guys feel a lot more prepared for the world of work. Now, one of the key things that I speak about when it comes to getting corporate ready is how do you prepare yourself for a successful transition into corporate? Now, a lot of you spend time at university, and there isn't a lot of thought around what does corporate actually look like? What does it feel like? What is expected of me to be someone that thrives in corporate spaces, right? And so one of the key things that I tend to speak about when I speak to students or when I speak to young professionals is really about, first, if you're at university, like I said, preparing yourself to be a well-rounded student. Students, being a student is not just about acing your tests and passing with great marks. It's not just about being an academic, right? And I think there's a misconception around, well, if I get good marks, someone is bound to hire me. Marks get you in the door, but when you are actually sitting there and you're in an interview, one of the things that we always look for in any corporate that you may go for is whether this person is going to be a fit, whether this person is a well-rounded person. And what I mean by being well-rounded is that, when you spend your time at university, spend your time doing some extracurricular activities, right? Because what that does for you is that it allows you to start engaging in team settings. It allows you to start honing in presentation skills. So if you're someone that's doing moot competitions, you're working in teams, you presenting in front of people, you're presenting an argument. So it allows you to sharpen your communication skills. It allows you to sharpen your teamwork skills. It allows you to sharpen your presentation skills. And doing extracurricular activities is not just about, doing things that seem like they're in line with the organization you're going to. Yes, that's a plus, but, doing extracurricular activities is about allowing yourself to learn how to juggle more than one thing. If you go into university and all you do is you just academic, like all you're doing is you and your books and that's it, you're going to realize very quickly that what the world of corporate requires is for you, yes, to be smart and to know the theoretical side of the career that you are in, but it also requires you to be someone that's going to be able to integrate in a corporate environment. And what that means is that when you're in corporate, you're not sitting on your own timetable, your own schedule that you are following. No, you are working with people that are your peers. You're reporting into people more senior than you. You've got multiple deadlines at any given point in time. And so the ability to juggle between more than one thing is what doing extracurricular activities at university really, really helps you with, right? Because you know that after studying, I need to go to practice, I need to commit to this, I've got a teamwork session with my syndicate group or whatever the case may be. It makes you ensure that you're learning time management skills, right? Which are things that are important for you in the world of corporate. So for those of you that are still at university, really look at yourself and look at how am I spending my time at university? Am I ensuring that at least I've got one other thing that's keeping me busy? And what are the skill sets that I'm learning from this thing, right? So that when you are going into interviews and they ask you a question around whether you're a team player or not, you've actually got tangible answers and you've got tangible examples that you can give around teamwork, or the way that you communicate has been sharpened because you do it so often now. The way that you present yourself now in an interview is that much more, polished. And so, that's what being a well-rounded student is about. And I think it's a key aspect that students need to be aware of. So if you're just at school and you're not doing any extracurricular activities, think about at least including one, right? I'm not saying you now need to go have a list of 5 different things that you are doing, because if at the end of the day, your marks are going down because you're doing extracurricular activities, that's not going to help you either. So make sure you're a well-rounded person. In my time in corporate, I've always gravitated more towards candidates that are maybe averaging a C average, but they've got at least 2 or 3 really good, solid extracurricular activities, because I know that when this person comes into corporate, they'll be able to adapt that much faster to the world of corporate. Whereas if I'm sitting with someone who's got a straight A transcript, but absolutely zero EQ, zero ability to work with other people, doesn't like to be given instructions, you can have all the smarts possible, but if you're not going to be someone that's going to work well with people, then it's going be a struggle for you, and it's going to be a struggle for HR as well in that particular corporate, and it's just not going to work out too well. So make sure you're always thinking about, am I being a well-rounded student? Am I spending my time in a way that allows me to develop other skills outside of my academics? Okay. The second thing that I think is important, always stay curious about your career opportunities from a very young age, from first year. You know, I used to go to career fairs at different universities, and you'd have first year graduates, I mean, not even graduates, first year students coming to find out about, what do you guys do? What opportunities do you have? That is the time to be asking those questions. In your first year, in your second year, in your third year, you need to be attending career fairs when corporates take out time on an annual basis to come and attend career fairs at various universities, so that they can give you a sense of what it is you can expect and what opportunities are there. Why is this important for you? It's important for you so that if you are in first year or second year and you realize that, geez, okay, in order for me to get into a top 5 law firm, they require someone that is, averaging a 65% average up. They're looking at someone that's a well-rounded student. They offer opportunities such as vacation programs. They, allow people to get bursaries as well. If you don't know all of these things and you are waiting until you're in final year to apply, right? And you realize only in final year that, oh no, we hire 2 to 3 years ahead of time. And so the only open and available opportunity is 2 years from now. Do you realize that you've left yourself in a position where you're now stuck? Right? You had a dream of where you wanted to be, but you weren't curious enough during the time at university to actually ask the right questions. Ask the right questions, engage with different organizations, attend vacation programs that are there for you guys whilst you're still studying, to really get a better sense of the different organizations that you could potentially be working for, but also it allows you to start networking with the right people. And hopefully through going through sessions like that, you're able to get into that particular corporate a lot easier, right? So staying curious about your career opportunities is really about making sure you're engaging all the time with different corporates and applying yourself to the different expectations that different corporates have, and understanding, how do I then shape my time in university to make sure I'm the right candidate when I'm ready to then apply for that particular role. Okay. But for those of you that are already working, I think it's always also very important to ensure that as you spend time, in your various roles, make sure that you never get into a stage where you are just comfortable in your career. I always say, if you've only been working for less than 5 years, that is the time where you should be rolling up your sleeves and trying to learn as much as you can about your career. Try learn as much as you can about the different organizations, the expectations. That's the time for you to be really putting in the work so that you can learn and gain as much momentum as possible in your career at that point in time. I think so many times people come into organizations and they're like, okay, this is my job. I'm not going to do anything more than just this job. And by the way, HR, what are you guys doing from a work-life balance perspective? And by the way, guys, do you have flexible working hours? Can I work from home? So I'm not saying those questions are not important to ask, right? I'm not saying that at all. But what I'm saying is that when you are in your career and you're in the first 5 years of your career, boy, that is the time to be rolling up your sleeves and really putting in as much effort as possible. I'm not saying at all that you don't take care of your mental health. I'm not saying at all that you don't take care of yourself if you're not in a great space mentally. Do that, right? But also set goals for yourself in your career to say, I'm young in my career. I don't have any other responsibilities. Maybe some of you do already, which is absolutely fine. But for those of you that don't as well, there's not a lot that's holding you back from really putting in the time. And the more time you put whilst you're still young in your career, the more exposure that you get and the more you're allowed to almost test out different aspects of your role to see how and how much you can get involved in particular areas. So staying curious about career opportunities is absolutely fundamental in helping you get corporate ready, but also the more exposure you get in your career whilst you're still young, it allows you to diversify the skill set that you are building. And it allows you then to be a lot more marketable in terms of if you're planning now to move from your current role into another, you're a lot more marketable at that point because you've really tried to stretch yourself in your younger years or in your early years. I mean, I'm still stretching myself now and I've been working for 14, 15 years. So, you know, the stretch never ends, but I think it really goes back to the type of character you are and whether you're always looking for a challenge and whether you're always looking for a new opportunity to really test out yourself and build, you know, that corporate muscle. So guys, stay curious about your career opportunity to progress within your career. Preparing a winning season.
Sorry, before you move on this point, I'm loving it so much. And I totally agree with you. It's very important to stay curious in your career. But what I wanted to emphasize, and you've already touched on it a little bit, is that you should be curious throughout your career, right? And so, yes, in varsity, you know, you need to be early on looking at how to get articles. But even within your career, you know, don't leave it till the point where you're frustrated with your work, you think you've hit the ceiling and you don't have opportunities. You need to consistently be thinking, yes, I'm growing, I'm loving my position now, I can still do this for the next 2 or 3 years, but I can see that this is where I want to be in 4 years, this is where I want to be in 5 years, and consistently be looking at, like, I don't want to say your escape hatch, but like where your next position is going to be, because you don't want to start looking at prospects for growth or new places to work, opportunities when you're desperate, right? You want to carry out that work or those investigations when you're still happy, so that any opportunities that come your way, you know, you'll be in a better negotiating position. And this is not necessarily about being curious to leave your organization, right? Even within your organization, there might be sort of different career paths that you might follow. You might transition to different roles. And if you're already thinking 2-3 years ahead, it's going to make that transition further down the line even easier if you stay curious.
Certainly, 100%. I couldn't agree more with you. Especially when you shared around staying curious throughout your career. I find a lot of times, you know, it's very easy for people to get into roles and just get comfortable and just stay there. And as long as I'm earning enough money and I'm getting my increases and my bonuses at the end of the year, then that's sufficient, right? But at some stage you hit a wall and you start feeling that itch to say, I'm not learning, I'm not growing anymore. And there's always opportunities for you to be growing and expanding your skill set, and staying curious even within your current role. I think there's a lot of people that I say you can still pivot within the organization that you're in. You know, changing of careers doesn't have to be an external thing. It can be, how am I starting to gain that skill set internally? How am I ensuring I'm positioning myself in my current organization to start learning a little bit more of something else, you know? So those things are absolutely important. And a key thing that you just spoke about now, Rorisang, is never get to a point where you are leaving out of desperation, right? Because that is something that I promise you, when you sit in an interview, recruiters can tell if you're just desperate to leave. And the one thing that we then want to zone into, if that is the case, is why? What's going on? What are you running away from? Whereas if you're leaving and you're at your peak and you are doing well, the energy that you bring into the room, the energy that you bring into the interview is very different to the type of energy you'd bring in if you were just kind of saying, geez, I'm desperate, I really need to go, I'll take whatever, right? So never get to a point, Rorisang made a very good point, never get to a point where you are desperate to leave an organization, because it's going to make it that much more difficult for you actually to pivot. And to maybe share a little story, I when I was at Investec, you know, it was my first kind of proper career, and in the first kind of 3 years that I was there, in the first year I was there, I was overextending myself, right? I was trying to please absolutely everyone, making sure that I was, you know, on top of absolutely everything. People would leave at 5 o'clock. I was still there until 9 o'clock every single night, until, you know, you get to a point where you don't realize how much pressure you're putting on yourself. And you get to a point where then, you know, when it's time for you it takes one thing that you do incorrectly and someone to tell you, oh my gosh, why didn't you do this properly, right? And knowing how much time and effort you put in, that gets to a point, it got to a point where it really broke me, right? Because I thought, geez, I'm spending so much of my time and nothing is good enough, right? And you can imagine what that does from a mental health perspective, right? You start doubting your potential, you start losing a little bit of confidence, you start wanting to shy away from actually, getting involved in a lot of different things because you feel like, just now I get told I'm not doing a great job or whatever the case may be. And at that time, I was then saying, listen, actually, I've had it. I'm ready to leave. But because I'm trying to run away from a situation, right, at the time, I promise you, I went for interview after interview after interview. And there was always something that people just felt like, we're not too sure if you're too ready for this. We're not too sure if you're ready for this. And I had to sit back and actually tell myself, Bohlale, you actually have to face whatever's happening at work at this point in time. You need to go back into it. You need to face, you need to change your mindset around the people you work with, around your self-confidence. You need to rebuild that. One mistake is not, it's not going to get your career crashing just because of that one thing. Stop being so hard on yourself. Get back into a good space and a good energy. And as soon as I've shifted, yes, it's not an overnight thing, guys. It takes a while for you to almost shift a mentality. But as soon as you shift from it and you start putting yourself back in there and you are a lot more positive, a lot happier, opportunities started coming to me, which was the strangest thing, right? Because I thought, geez, I've been going out and interviewing, not getting something. As soon as I tell myself that actually I'm fine, I'm happy, I'm working on being happy and being, back to my confident self, opportunities start coming, right? So the energy thing is absolutely important. And I think it's very important for you guys to always be aware of that as you go through your career as well. I've spoken about writing a winning CV. And then the next slide, I'm just going to take you through a couple of points that I think are important for you to keep in mind as you prepare your CV, whether you're a student or whether you're still a young professional in your corporate career. Preparation for interviews, like I said, is absolutely fundamental, but equally important for you to be staying informed around what's happening around you. So don't just be narrow-minded and think about this particular interview. How am I going to ace this particular interview without understanding what's happening around me? Because if they ask you a question around what's happening lately, what's happening in the news, what's your take on this, what's your take on that, have an opinion on stuff, right? So I'm not saying stay in the news 24/7 all the time, but just make sure that you are, keeping yourself alert to what's happening around you and within your environment. I don't know if there's any questions before I start on the CV thing. Rory-san, do you want me to go until the end or do you want me to break in between?
I don't think we have time for a break, so just go through the end and then they can ask questions
happy
at the end.
Happy. So guys, just a few tips just to help you out just from a CV perspective. CV is so important. And it's because it's your first introduction to anyone, right? And to any organization. It's not possible for organizations to know you in person before they know you're on your CV, right? So how you put together a CV is so fundamental because you think of it as you introducing yourself to the company. What are the key things they want to know? What are the key things that they want to see, right? And so one of the first things that's important for you to note is making sure that you're keeping a neat CV is critical. Recruiters, on average, take about 7 seconds when they're skimming through a CV. And if your CV is just a Word document and you're just kind of putting paragraphs after paragraph, no one wants to sit and read that, right? So how you format your CV, you'll see I put a little bit of an example here on the right just to give you a sense of formatting. How you format your CV is important. Each of the areas that you see on the CV are clearly marked out: the contact details, the expertise, the education, the work experience, a little bit of a profile summary. On one page, you get a sense of who Richard is, right? I've just pulled this off of the internet, so it's not anyone that I know, but you get a sense of who this particular person is. But keeping it neat is important. As you can see, the formatting here allows you to have a lot of information put in on this one pager. Make sure your spelling and your grammar is absolutely, checked out. If there's spelling mistakes already in the first 2-3 sentences, what it says to me as a recruiter is that you don't pay attention to detail. You couldn't care less about making sure that this particular document for a job that you are applying for is correct, right? So make sure your spelling and your grammar is there, but also whether you put a picture or not has always been a debate. And I've always gotten questions around, should I put a picture, should I not? I personally prefer a picture. I want to be able to almost visualize the person I'm reading about, but it's not important at all. You can definitely have a CV format that does not have a picture and just has your details in, but ensure that you're still keeping it neat and well formatted, as I've said in point 1. Point 2, I think important to keep it short, especially if you've only had, I've got a 2.5 page CV, and that's, 14 years worth of work experience. So if you've only been working for 5 years, a 1-pager, I think, is sufficient. It's really about ensuring that you understand how to put in the right type of information. So you almost put 2 or 3 bullet points per role that you are doing, and that gives someone a summary of the type of work that you were doing in there. A lot of people like to write really long paragraphs explaining what it is they're doing, and a bullet point is almost like they're putting their job spec per job role. And it's like, we don't need to know all the nitty-gritties. We need to know high level, what was your role? What were you responsible for doing? I was responsible for recruiting, for marketing, for developing, for performance management, right? In a nutshell. All the other detail that goes in between, save that for the interview. If they ask you questions around it, that's where you can elaborate. But on your CV, make sure that you're keeping it short. A page or 2 maximum, I think, is sufficient if you are a young professional. And make sure not to put paragraphs, just bullet point key aspects that are important. Number 3 is a personal summary. And that's what you'll see on the top right there, where it says profile. A personal summary is really just a very short introduction on who you are. So before I even go into the rest of the detail that's important, at the bottom there, that summary gives me a sense of who you are, where you studied, what career you're going after, what your key achievements have been, and why you're applying for this job. That's all you write in those 4 or 5 sentences there, right? So it's just a way of stringing it together so that it makes sense. But those are the key aspects that you need to be thinking about and putting in your personal summary section of your CV. Now, like I said, that is your introduction to the person that is learning about you. So make sure everything is set in place and you've got the right grammar and all of those things. The other thing that I think is important in your personal summary, peak interest, right? So even if you add in something that's a little bit quirky about you, or something that is a highlight for you, one of your biggest achievements, put that in there, because that's what piques someone's interest. And so when someone reads that, they're thinking to themselves, geez, this person won championship in whatever. It doesn't have to be something hectic, but I'm just saying, put something in there that's interesting about you, because that's what makes people then want to read more about who you are, right? In the 4th point is your education section. I think, guys, always so key to be clear and succinct in here. You don't need to be writing all of your different matric subjects in it. Once again, think space, right? So when you're talking about your matric, you put your high school, you put the date of, the year that you matriculated. And if you're a prefect or there was some notable achievement, you can put it right under there, right? And then the next thing you build to your undergraduate degree, what university, what qualification am I studying? What year did I start? 2017 to 2020. That's it. If you're doing an honors, same thing. University, what honors am I doing? What year did I do it? That is all that needs to be in your education section. If people want to know more about whether you were a Dutch scholar at high school, or whether you achieved, I don't know, however many awards at university, put that under maybe like a key achievements section. If you can create one on this, so as opposed to expertise, you put together key notable achievements, and then you can detail some of that stuff there. If people want to know what you averaged, they've got your transcript to go to, and they can see all of that detail there. So keep your CV neat and to the point from an education perspective. And then from an experience perspective, always start with your most current role and then work backwards, right? I don't want to start at what your first job was. when I start, I want to see where you currently are now and what were the other roles that you did thereafter. So always work not anti-clockwise, but work reverse chronological order, right? so try from the most recent all the way to the last. And like I said, make sure that you're keeping that section absolutely short to the point with 3 bullet points.
Bohlale, there's just a question here from Ubuntu, and she's saying she wanted to ask the contents to write in the personal summary as opposed to the cover letter.
So the cover letter is almost an expansion of your personal summary, right? So the contents that you're writing in your personal summary of your CV, like I said, you almost have to put your name, what I studied, where, what career I'm into, or what career I'm aspiring to go into, a notable achievement, and why you're applying for the role. That needs to be almost your 5 sentences, right? So you're almost stringing in a quick, if someone was saying to you an elevator pitch of who you are, it's a 5-sentence summary of who you are. Now, when you go to your cover letter is an opportunity to expand on that a little bit more. So your cover letter typically is a page long, and in that you are detailing the same thing, but you're giving a little bit more context, right? You're giving a little bit more about your background. So instead of saying this is what I'm studying, you're almost giving a sense of the reason I've chosen to study this is because as I grew up, this was my motivation around this. This is what I experienced in life. And this is why I've decided to study this particular degree, right? Where I hope to go in my career is to become this type of professional, because I believe that, so you're almost expanding on each of the points that you're going to do in a 5-sentence summary on your CV. You expand on it a little bit more and give a little bit more context. So it's just a more in-depth read of why you're doing what you're doing and who you are.
Okay.
Does that help, Bohlale?
Yes, she says she's got it.
Happiness. I do have, sorry, I feel like I am rushing through information, but there is a lot. I do have a video just on cover letters, and it will help you get a sense of, you know, the formatting, the information, how much information, and will give you a little bit more of a guideline as to what
is that on your YouTube channel, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, so great.
Okay, so we've only
sorry,
got
Bohlale, sorry. Before you go on, Mantebile is asking here: is it important to include a cover letter in every job application, or must we wait for them to ask for it?
I think it depends. It depends. Some organizations have an applicant tracking system, so you're applying through an applicant tracking system, and it may request for you to have that in there. But if the application is just send your CV, send your academic transcript, just send those 2, right? If they request for it, I always say if they request for your cover letter, send your cover letter. So always have one ready and prepared, then send it. But if there isn't a request for it, I think it's, a CV and whatever other documentation they ask for is then important. Okay. So that was just top tips around how to put together a winning CV. But like I said, if you want a lot more in-depth information, it's there on the YouTube channel as well. Now, once you've gotten
interrupt again. We have another question. Well, Amat is asking, how do I ensure that my CV is ATS compliant?
What generally happens is that on an ATS, they allow you to upload an attachment, but most ATSs actually ask you to detail the information out. So an applicant tracking system, what it does is that so if you put yourself in a recruiter's shoes, if I'm looking through 100 different applications, right? Instead of opening 100 different CVs, an applicant tracking system allows for me to get a sense of who this individual is because they've filled in information on the actual system. So you'll find that sometimes you find it quite repetitive that, oh, but this information is on my CV and now they're asking me to actually type it out. The reason you're typing it out is so that I can easily just filter based on applications that have come through to say, okay, for this particular role, I'm looking for someone that comes from Wits University, say, for instance, right? I can then filter, because if each of you have typed in Wits University, it pops up as part of the applicant tracking system, and I can filter through that. So generally, when they ask you for a CV on an applicant tracking system, it's literally just an attachment, right? And once it's attached on there, that's fine. It's just for them to refer back to it. But you will be required to actually almost spell out your CV in certain categories that they'd be looking for. Okay. So don't worry about your CV being compliant to the applicant tracking system. You're most likely going to fill out the stuff that they're actually looking for from your CV. Okay,
great. And then Ntokozo's hand is up. She or he.
Go for it, Ntokozo.
Good morning, Rorisang. Thank you, Bohlale, for joining us today. I just wanted to ask, it's more of an admin question. Are we going to have time at the end of this to ask more in-depth questions? I don't want to spam the group chat, or are we having to ask, like, sandwich our questions in between?
Okay, so I think this is my last slide. Yes.
Okay.
So it's my last slide. Let me touch on the key skills, and then we'll open up for questions.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Ntokozo. Okay, so guys, here what I'm speaking about is some of the top skills that are important for young professionals in the world of work. Guys, there's a lot of skills that are important, right? But I'm going to touch on these 5 because I think these are the ones that are particularly important for corporate, and especially whilst you're still young in your career. So number 1, like I said, communication is absolutely vital. In any corporate environment you're in, you're working with people all the time. Being an effective communicator, getting to the point of what you are saying, being able to sum up what you are hearing from someone and being able to tell it back to them in a way that says you've comprehended what they've said. Communicating is absolutely, absolutely vital, right? A lot of things get missed in whether it's instructions that have been given to you. Now you've gone and spent a week doing this thing, but you didn't communicate well enough to say whether you understood or didn't understand, or whatever the case may be. Being an effective communicator means being able to listen very well. Effective communication is not just about you talking, but it's about being able to listen and distill what someone is saying to you, but also being able to then respond to them to say that I've heard you, this is what I've understood, am I on the right track, right? Effective communication also goes hand in hand with managing expectations, which is, another thing altogether. But being able to manage expectations of where you are with certain things as you are doing your tasks, and making sure that your manager is not the one chasing up with you, but you the one that is effectively communicating as you are doing the particular task that you're supposed to be doing. So communication is absolutely key, guys. Don't shy away from communicating. You'd rather over communicate than under communicate, because I think that's where things get lost in translation. Skill number 2 is problem solving. By this, what I mean is that always be the type of person that is looking for solutions, right? Wherever there's a problem, or if there's a problem somewhere, it doesn't help you going to your manager and saying, this is the problem. Be the kind of person that's saying, listen, this is the problem that I've bumped into at this point in time, but this is how I think we can go about doing this. I've spoken to this one, I've spoken to this one. Are you okay that this is how I solve it? Be the kind of person in a room and in a meeting that is always looking to say, okay, guys, we hear the problem. How about we try do this? How about we try do that, right? So be the kind of person that is always looking to solve any issue that you are in. And especially when you're working in teams, make sure that you're someone that's not just always bringing the problem, but also someone that's trying to find the solution. Problem solving is absolutely important. It goes hand in hand with critical thinking, which is another skill that's important. But being able to really do that is really going to help you in your corporate career. Resilience goes without saying. Corporate is a tough, tough place to be. And there's a lot of times where you really need to speak to self. You need to speak to yourself and not allow your emotions and your thoughts to really overcome you, right? There's a lot of times where you're going to face issues, you're going to be dealing with difficult people in the work environment. how do you navigate that? How do you overcome that? It takes a lot of grit. It takes a lot of resilience. And I promise you, if you stick through it, you'll look back and realize you've learned so much. You've learned so much about people. You've learned so much about yourself. And it actually equips you to be a better person at every role that you go to, right? I shared a little bit about my time at Investec, which was my first role. And had I run away from my issues at that point in time, I wouldn't have learned what I needed to learn over the next year and a half before I then did move out of Investec. And that is the resilience piece. It's an uncomfortable thing to go through because it's not necessarily where you want to be or the people you want to be working with, whatever the issue may be. Resilience says, okay, I know this is an issue. How am I problem solving it, right? How am I going to, through problem solving, how am I going to better communicate so that I can solve the issue, right? So all of these things go hand in hand, and resilience is very important. I see a lot of people that are young go into roles after a couple of months. This place is a toxic environment, I'm out. And I'm like, everywhere you go, there's going to be a level of toxicity somewhere. There'll be a person, there'll be a manager, there'll be an issue. And running away from it is not helping you learn the skills that you need to learn. Anyway, I can go for a very long time into that. Now, emotional intelligence, guys, EQ is fundamental. I don't know how else to explain, but EQ is absolutely fundamental. Learning to understand yourself, being self-aware about how do people experience me, right? I've said something now, there's a little bit of silence and awkwardness in the room. What happened, right? Did I say something wrong? Should I have said it differently? How do you respond to other people that are not in a great space, or people that are being rude or abrasive or being condescending? How do you respond to that? Emotional intelligence is how you regulate yourself, your emotions, your thoughts, for yourself, but also with other people as well. So if you hone in the skill, I promise you, it helps you in so many ways in how you navigate the corporate space and dealing with different people and different situations. And 5 goes without saying, being a team player is absolutely important. Don't gravitate to always working on your own and always wanting to be independent. You learn a lot more when you work with other people, but it is a lot more challenging as well because you're dealing with personalities that you don't always want to be dealing with. But being a team player means making sure that you're always thinking about team and not just about you as an individual, and think about what is the greater goal, what are we trying to achieve for the organization as well. So those are my top 5 that I think are important for you to be thinking about. But I'm going to close now for questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bohlale, and I'm sure we're going to have a lot of questions. I love your top 5 skills, and it's so weird because my mentorship brief, which I'm going to be sending out at some point today, talks about skill stacking. And the fact that as a lawyer, you need to accumulate all of these different skills. And there's I think I have 4 of those on there. There's one that I don't have, so I'm going to steal it and update the mentorship brief. But it will tie in so nicely with the mentorship brief for today, because it literally talks to that. The fact that your legal knowledge as lawyers is the bare minimum when it comes to the type of skills that you need to hone and you need to work on. And I do share what my stack is, and there is a lot of that stuff. I think emotional intelligence isn't there, and resilience, and I think it's a very good 2 additional things, but it ties in so nicely with today's mentorship brief. So thank you for that. I think, guys, you can ask questions now. So it's a good thing that you have the slide. So you can see Bohlale already shares so much information on YouTube, and her YouTube, I'm so envious of your YouTube channel. It looks amazing. I'm going to actually call you and ask you what apps and stuff you're using, because it looks really good. So someone has got their hand up. You can go ahead and ask a question.
Hi, Bohlale and Rory-san. Thank you for today's session. Just a quick one. So I find myself in a position where I have been recently admitted working in the role that I am, and I currently enjoy the environment that I'm in. However, it's the job that I'm doing where it's interesting, but I know for the long term, it's not what I want to do. So it's more like a question of, from your perspective and from both your perspectives, it's the whole thing of pivoting, especially when you've sort of been doing a certain thing for a while, how do I then place myself in a favorable position to pivot in my career?
Sorry, who am I speaking to?
Kwezi.
Kwezi. Okay. Yes. So Kwezi, are you still doing your articles, or you done with articles?
I'm done with my articles. I'm currently working at a bank. So yeah.
Okay. Geez, a bank is different. So I guess, Kwezi, it depends on what you want to pivot to, right? When you're working at a bank and you almost do like an in-house legal, I think in those types of environments, there's so many opportunities for you to explore other types of careers. It's very different if you're doing that and you're in law and maybe you just want to pivot to a different practice area as opposed to the one that you are in. But I always say that, ensuring that you're networking with people in specific areas that you wanted to pivot into to allow you to start gaining some of the knowledge. And if you most probably do have that in a bank, but if you've got that type of division within the organization that you'd like to go into, how can you, in your spare time, start spending a little bit more time with the people that are in that area so that you get a better understanding of what's happening, what does this work like, how does this work? Spending like some really good time understanding it from a knowledge-based perspective, if you try to pivot away from law, from a knowledge-based perspective, but also trying to see how you can start building the right type of relationships so that practically, if there's projects they're on or something that you feel like, in your spare time, you can actually start doing, that's how you start getting yourself involved in that. And once they start realizing you've got a passion for it, it's a lot easier if opportunities come up to say, hey, this is an opportunity that's come up. Would you like to start off, as a junior person in this particular department? So it depends on a lot of factors. I'd be able to give you a lot more of a succinct answer if I knew exactly where you're at, what you're trying to move into, how and when. But maybe Rory can give you a sense. I mean, you're currently at Nedbank, hey, Rory?
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
I am. Sorry, I think maybe. So who was that? Was it
Kwezi?
Kwezi, do you know? Can you just send me a message afterwards, and then we can have like a more in-depth conversation?
Yeah.
Just drop me an email and say, hi, Rory, this is my email, and then I'll set up some time with you to just have a more in-depth discussion. I'm just worried that we're running out of time.
No problem. Will do. Thank you.
And then I just wanted to just get through everyone else. A few other people sent, and this is, I think, might be relevant for a lot of people. Danki So has written a message here on the chat about he studied at NWU, and he talks about, the classism that is in the big law firms if you didn't go to like Wits or UCT or like private schools. And he or she asks what you suggest that he does about the classism, especially in the big five firms.
Are you already in the law firm, is my question, or are you trying to get into a law firm?
I think the question is trying to get in, and he says he never made it into established law firms because he didn't study at a historically white institution. And it doesn't happen, and it doesn't frequently happen that they do recruit from other universities. Yeah.
You know what? It's a real problem. I'm not going to say that it doesn't exist. I think it definitely is a real problem. And it really takes the person that heads up that particular division to start changing the narrative, right? Mm-hmm. I think if you are going to expect people that are partners, people that have been in that particular law firm for a long time, and historically they've always just hired from the UCTs and the Witses and those kinds of places. If you're going to wait for them to change, that's not gonna happen as easily as we'd like it. So I really think it always boils down to the person who's almost running the grad program to say, no, we are actually going to make a concerted effort to ensure that we are including, candidates that are coming from previously disadvantaged kind of areas or universities or whatever the case may be, because there's always gems. That for me was a big thing that I did at Bowman's, where I just said to myself, there's no way we have to make sure in every year that we have someone from a UFS, from a Northwest, from, UNISA. I mean, even UNISA students say, like, we don't get looked at. What's the deal? right? And slowly but surely that narrative started changing. Even if it's 1 or 2 people in a year where you've taken 40, it starts changing the narrative a little bit, because then people are in there and they actually start proving that they are as capable as any other person that's come from a different university. So I think I don't know how to answer you in your question.
No, I think you've answered. I think you've answered it well. There's only so much that people can do. It is definitely, from my experience, up to the people who are heading up the team. I mean, when I joined Bowman's, which was in 2007, they were not even recruiting at Rhodes, and I went to Rhodes. And the reason they went to Rhodes that year is because Utembe Toby was the head of labor, and he went to Rhodes, and he had like an affinity to it, and he's purposefully went to recruit at Rhodes. So even the other, if you're not UCT, Stellenbosch, or Wits, you are sort of outside where they would normally recruit. And to your point, it just depends on who's heading up the team and whether you do have people within the organization who will purposefully fight to get people from other universities. The other thing I wanted to say, though, is that just because you don't get into the big firms for articles, it doesn't mean you can't transition later. So a lot of people don't, because at that level, they're very... like the recruiters or HR might have a predisposition to bigger universities, but there's a lot of attrition in law firms, right? So once you get to associates or senior associate level, if you've done well at a smaller, medium-sized firm, it doesn't mean that you can't then transition later on into your career into the big firms. And I've seen a lot of directors now in the big firms who started off at smaller law firms and then they just transition. Unfortunately, people have different types of privilege, and going to a certain university does provide you with a privilege. But there's also other ways of looking at it and saying, how are the ways that I'm privileged, right? So if you're a man, you're already privileged more than women, right? If you're white, you're already more privileged than Black people. And if you went to a certain high school and then you went to a different university, there's also privilege. So I wrote something on LinkedIn. You guys must just check out my LinkedIn profile. I wrote a post the other day on how you can find commonalities with people outside of the boys club and try and network effectively with people to build those relationships, and you might find that because you are from Venda, someone might have gone to UCT but they're also from there, and you can build those commonalities with people that you network with. So it's not I don't make it in straight from varsity into the big firms. You can make it once your career progresses. You obviously just need to work harder. Unfortunately, if you don't have the privilege of having gone to that university, you have to prove yourself in other ways. So if you know that ultimately you want to end up in the big firms, if you're in a small firm, build your profile. And you guys know I go on about social media a lot. Be active on LinkedIn. Write articles, be involved in industry organizations to network, to try and build those relationships so that you can work your way up to actually getting those opportunities later on in your career.
Exactly. And just to add to that a little bit, Rorisang, when you're in a small or medium-sized law firm, make sure that you are also building a skill set for the types of practice areas that you can find in a bigger law firm, right? Cool. So make sure if you've got the opportunity to get involved in kind of commercial or contract law or litigation, those are practice areas you'll find there. Whereas if you spending a lot of time maybe doing, road accident funds, you're not going to find that at a big law firm. So always think strategically about how you spend your time and what skill set that you are gaining in a small or medium-sized law firm, because that's going to allow you then to build the type of CV that you need in order then to pivot into that.
100%. Okay, and then Dogozo, you also have your hand up?
Yes, hi Rorisang, thank you so much. Bohlale, you touched on something that I actually wanted to ask, and it had to do with applying years ahead for articles at, say, top big 5 or even a medium-sized firm or even a small firm, and that oftentimes students find themselves stuck in their final year. And that you as a recruiter, that indicates a lack of curiosity throughout your university career. So I'm I'm in a similar predicament, except it wasn't a lack of curiosity. I'd been curious throughout. It just was a matter of progressing and strengthening my transcript. But I had done things in the interim period to show that I am making up for that shortfall. For instance, I would reach out to justices and shadow them. I would reach out to advocates and attorneys and shadow them, knowing that my peers also had that advantage of doing VAC work programs, which also does have its own set of, there's a criteria, there's a threshold that you need to meet in order to get into that as well. Fast forward to the first half of my final year, I finally got my transcript to where I wanted to be. And it's still very competitive getting into that space. I've also developed myself outside of academia. I think in my head, it made sense to do it that way as well, because I had that insecurity previously. So being involved in campus initiatives, serving under leadership positions, etc., trying to be well-rounded. And I still find myself struggling. So with a candidate like that, and where you could see that there has been progression academically, but also in terms of their confidence, how do we then package ourselves to try get into that space? What would your advice be? Because I know that you did serve at Bowman's. I think you actually spoke to us some years back. And I remember you mentioning that picture in the CV, and I've left it there since. But how would you go about advising someone in that predicament?
So what I would do, especially if you said you're in your final year now, hey?
Yes.
So when there are opportunities to meet some of the graduate recruitment people at different your university, make sure you striking up, build a relationship with them, I think is what I'm trying to say, right? Because I think sometimes, even now, I still sometimes get people saying, oh, Bohlale, I'm struggling to find, articles. I know people in the legal industry. Could you maybe put forward my CV and just help me out in that way? I think once you develop a relationship with someone, so at the next career fair, I know career fairs are probably now long done.
Yes.
And so that's not going to help. But I was going to say at the next career fair, go there with CVs that are prepared, chat to people, like explain to them, listen, I know I didn't start off well, but I did progress over the last kind of year and a half or so, and I've done extracurricular activities. What are the chances? Is it something that I could still come into? Still apply. I'd still apply for articles, even if you may be taking an additional year next year, where you maybe want to do your PLT full-time, or you maybe want to do an honors in something. I wouldn't give up now. So I'd still apply for VAC programs, maybe this December one coming up. I'd still apply for articles, even if it's for 2024, because I think putting yourself out there, still saying, listen, this is where I still want to be. You're using the time to maybe build a particular skill set as well, finish off your PLT, make yourself a lot more marketable. That's a way that I always suggest people to do that. Contact people via social media as well. That's helped a lot. I've seen a lot of people over my time get in and get a coffee, get an interview with someone just because, they contacted you on social media. So contact on social media, still apply for roles, even if it looks like it's 2 years ahead of time, but also still apply for vacation or internship opportunities to just give yourself an opportunity to actually be in front of someone. Because I think sometimes once someone experiences your personality and what you have to offer, that also has a weighing factor, right? But if you're sitting there and you've got 1,000 CVs to look for, you're going to filter through based on academics just off the bat, and already you'll get a batch of people more than what you need. So getting yourself in front of people, whether through social media or through making sure you're applying for VAC programs, internships, anything that you can, job shadowing, go for opportunities like that. And even if you're trying to find people, on LinkedIn that are lawyers, that are maybe working in-house or maybe in practice, and you're saying, listen, can I have a 30-minute coffee with you? I've done that in my career, where I contacted kind of the head of HR at Discovery, and I was like, listen, your profile is so impressive. You inspire me. Could we have a coffee? Like, could we chat? And I was lucky enough to get at least 2 or 3 different coaching sessions with them, which were invaluable for me. And so sometimes you just need to be brave and ask the question. You know, the worst that you can get is someone saying no.
Yeah, I'll try the coffee route. It seems I've checked off all the others are still applied. I've still applied for 2024. I have managed to form some form of a relationship with some graduate recruiters via email. Even before this year had commenced, I'd reached out to them. So I'll try that as well. I'll just keep at it.
Okay. And chat to me on whether you're on Instagram or LinkedIn. Let me see if I can help refer you at least to people that I know, and then take it.
I'll reach out to you on LinkedIn. Thank you.
That would be amazing. Thank you so much. I think we are going to close off because we are over time. Oh, Mantebile had one question. Sorry, I'm just going to take one more because I know your hand has been up for a while, and then we're going to close off because we are over time.
Oh, hi, Rory. I just wanted to say thank you to Bohlale for everything. You know, not a lot of us are exposed to so much information. I follow her on Instagram, you know, and she avails herself to other platforms like Panda, talking about rejection in the workplace. I just wanted to say that, you know, as a young female, Black, I appreciate the work that you just give out, and the information is free. I really learn a lot from you, and I just wanted to say thank you for making this all available to us. Thank you, Bohlale. We recognize your work and we learn from it. Thank you.
That's amazing. That's like, there's nothing more to say after that. Thank you so much. The session was just amazing. I think to date, this is the best session we've had. I have recorded it because it's like literally gold, and I'm going to be putting it up on my YouTube channel. And then you can just let me know if you want the recording as well, but I'll obviously send it to you. But thank you so much. Thanks, guys, for taking the time out to actually join the session. I know a lot of people, you know, don't have the time, and they'll just listen to the recording further, like down the line once they do have time. It's always so great for us to actually have you on the sessions and ask all of these important questions and to just get the energy from you. So thank you for taking the time out. And Bohlale, literally, like, I have no words. Like, this was so great, and we really appreciate your time. So thanks, guys. I will be sending out further correspondence here.
Thank you so much, Rory. Really appreciate it. Such a privilege to be here today.